Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie. Welcome back to the DraftKings DFS Slate Breakdown. Three-gamer on this Saturday slate, which is light of how it typically is, but super intriguing nonetheless, and plenty of ways to go. But before we get into that, as usual, we will go into projected lineups and set pieces for West Ham. I think it'll be Soler and Emerson. They had zero corners against Fulham, which was not helpful when you're trying to see what a new coach is establishing for set pieces. But I remember just in like 10 minutes or so I watched from that game, there's like a free kick that Soler and Emerson were both standing over. So I figured they will do the same for corners. However, never know for sure. Like Paquetá or Kudus could end up taking those, but I think that's the less likely scenario. So yeah, Soler and Emerson, I think, are the two most likely. And then for Crystal Palace, it should be Will Hughes and Eze, another team who just didn't have a ton of corners last game. Brentford and Liverpool. Brentford just should be Mbeumo and Jensen. And then for Liverpool, it should be Simicast and Alexander-Arnold, I want to say. They scored off of a Simicast corner last game, so I feel like he's kind of the safest option. Alexander-Arnold took a corner too. But then McAllister and Szoboszlai have both taken corners lately over Alexander-Arnold. So who really knows there? Like they're a team that just has been chopping and changing quite a bit. I still think the fullbacks are the most likely. Leicester and Fulham. Leicester, another team that has not had a super consistent set piece routine, especially if we see Ayu and El Canus in last Leicester slate. We got super lucky that Ayu didn't end up starting. It was Buonanotte there, which made a pretty clear split between El Canus and Buonanotte. But with Ayu, it becomes a little bit more messy just because Ayu and El Canus are both right-footed guys. So it's just not quite as clear of a likely set split. Christensen is the left-footed option if they end up going like righty-lefty. And then between Ayu and El Canus, who knows? I feel like Ayu kind of is the more likely guy, but it really can be either one. They've just not played together a whole lot. I really hope we don't see both of them for tomorrow or for whenever you're watching this for the Saturday slate. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. I think it could be really any combo of those three guys if this projected lineup is correct. And then for Fulham, they have Pereira in, which I'd be a little surprised about because he's not been like a guaranteed starter lately. He's played last game and the FA Cup game before that, which is already more than I expected from him. To play three in a row, I think would be a little surprising because I think he's a guy who kind of wants to leave anyway. But if he does start, he's the guy who takes most chance of Wilson splitting. And if Pereira doesn't start, it should be a Wilson and Lukic split. Lukic will only take, though, if Pereira doesn't play, just because we're right-footed guys. All right. Prices. The first thing that automatically pops out is 12K Mohamed Salah. That's a ton for a classic slate. Like what? You only get an average of 6K typically per player, and he's double that. That's pretty rare. Like I don't know if we've had a guy this much all season in Prem. Like let's see. Yeah, he's not been. This is the most Salah's been for sure. They've not been on a ton of classic slates, but he's never been more than 11, and now he's 12. I would say that's a big decision, but I think it's a tough day for forwards. And it makes me think you just eat that salary anyway and just build around that 12K for Salah. Like you look at the alternatives, you got the other Liverpool guys who like Gakpo, Diaz. I think Jota is questionable, so he might not even play. But like Nunez, I guess, like 5K. Was he projected, Nunez? No, so he wasn't even projected even with Jota questionable. But if Nunez plays for 5K, that's an alternative there. That's a significant savings. But like the other guys, though, like Diaz, Gakpo, to Salah, the price difference doesn't really warrant, I think, going down from Salah to those guys. I'd just rather prioritize Salah there in cash games at least. So I think you just, yeah, you eat that price for Salah. Like the alternatives just aren't worth it even in the other games. Like Iwobi, I'd love him if he was 6 or 7K. I played him last slate against West Ham. Got that super fluky brace where they looked like crosses, and just nobody touched them. That was kind of wild to see. I don't think I'm risking him doing that again though for 10,600 in cash. And it's just not a ton here. Like there's Mabadidi, who I think is okay. Nunez, who I talked about, I like a lot for 5K. Then Jordan Ayew. I think this is probably the next best option outside of Salah for price, just because I think he likely takes. He's super solid for floor typically, even without getting a ton across, just because he's such a foul drawn dude. He just it's a skill drawing fouls, and he's super good at doing that. Gets tackles, like he works hard on and off the ball, which makes him pretty good for DFS points. It's like Jordan Ayew, I like quite a bit, especially if we see no El Canus. I'd feel like he's a borderline lock in that case. Even with El Canus, I'd probably just risk him anyway. And then there's just not a ton else here, like I was saying. Like Mavididi, okay. He took a corner last game too. Adama Traore, if he starts, sure. But all these guys, I just feel like you just pair in tandem with Salah. You can even go double Liverpool and get salary or get your forwards that way and then find salary elsewhere because there's going to be a bunch of cheap bargain guys I'm gonna get into in the midfield here. And the team that's really gonna come from is West Ham and Leicester potentially, but we'll get there as we go down. Like in terms of pay up mids, I'm interested in Wilson, not really for that much. Even if there's no Pereira, I just think that's too much for him. Szoboszlai too much as well. Pereira, he himself, I think, is just slightly too expensive. I liked him more in that 6K range. I know he potentially has monopoly, but he's a guy who just does not go 90 minutes, has not in some time. You got an 80 like a couple months back, but I just feel like he's just not a mainstay in this team anymore. And because of that, like I just don't really think he's worth the 70 minutes that you get out of him for that expensive. McAllister, I don't mind it. The problem is I just like him to have sets. He's been solid even without them like he was last game, but I just like set pieces out of my midfielders. And I just don't know if he's guaranteed to have those. I don't think he's a bad play by any means for 6K. I'd go him over a Pereira probably, but it's a tough roster. What a note I could get behind at 5,600. He's a guy who's just super solid. Like, didn't even have a cross last game, still had 9 points. I don't know why he doesn't get more minutes. He's probably Leicester's most talented player. He just barely plays. Like 5K for Buenanote, I like a lot. Now we're getting into this team I'm talking about, West Ham. All these guys are super tempting. They're actually favored, which is rare for them. I really like how they've been playing under Graham Potter. Just super solid to watch. Like Kudus at 5,400, I don't mind. I know he's not been as good as he was in the past. He's not been a guaranteed 90-minute guy, but for 5K, I could see myself getting there. And Paquetá, I loved him under Graham Potter. 2 games, 2 goals he's had. He's a guy who just has a floor. Not on your typical kind of floor that you think of, which is just crosses and set piece taking, but he gets tackles drawn or he tackles, fouls drawn, I mean. He's just super solid, especially when he's playing more wide like he has been. They don't have him there for this game, but I think he might drift anyway. Like I don't think Soler is going to be wider than him in actual game if they run that lineup. Like I really like Paquetá at 4,500. I like Kudas at 5K. I like Soler at 3,400. Got his first goal. I was so sad that I didn't play Soler in cash on the day he finally did something. I've had him for all these games where he's dropped to 3-4-2s. But he should have set pieces next game. And yeah, for 3,400, that's such a cheap set piece taker. You got Will Hughes too, another dirt cheap set taker, 3,500. El Canus, 3,300. Not guaranteed sets or anything, but like I said in my video last time for Leicester, like he's just a cheap attacker. And he was completely fine. Only played 66 minutes and still had 8.5 points. Like I like El Canus a lot. There's so many just budget mids I think you can get to. All those guys I just mentioned. Jensen even away or at home against Liverpool, 3K. I don't even think is terrible. So yeah, there's plenty of value here, which is why I hammer that I think you just play Salah in cash. Like there's ways to get there for sure. Defenders. There's quite a few pretty interesting ones. Whenever there's Liverpool, there's always their two fullbacks. Alexander-Arnold, Tsimikas likely to play here. I think it's gonna be super popular just to go both of them. Andy Robinson has kind of risen as kind of the next big name in terms of fullbacks. He's not a set piece taker like we usually like out of our pay up prem fullbacks, but he's just been so solid. It's hard to argue against him with these numbers. Like that 30 bomb almost last game is just incredible. But I just don't know if I'd go him over the Liverpool fullbacks. I think there's a world where you just go all three of those guys. But there's definitely some debate there over what combos for sure. And then even Emerson I'd throw in there too. I know wasn't great against Fulham, but Crystal Palace are a little less possession based than Fulham are. So I think he's got a little bit more chance to attack. Like we saw those Leicester guys all get pretty decent floor, which I think West Ham could do too. They're a better team than Leicester is. And Palace are not afraid to kind of sit back. Like I like Emerson. I like those four guys I just mentioned. Trent, Simicas, Robinson, Emerson, even Christensen, I think are all fine. Christensen, I'd maybe put a tier below those other three guys, other four guys. But there's, I think, quite a few ways to go for a defender. Other guys I think about Connor Bradley, if they decide to rest Trent at 3K, I think is super tempting. So far, if he starts at right back at 3K, I think is not bad either. If Cresswell or what's the other guy, Scarles start for West Ham at left back, they both have chances of taking set pieces, and they'd be cheaper than Emerson. I'd assume they'd play over him if they went with that lineup. I'd be fine with both of those guys too. Like other guys, I'm thinking about like there's the Palace fullbacks, sure, Castagne, sure. I just like those set piece takers more. James Justin too. I played him last game, was fine for 3K. Don't mind that as a bargain bin defender. So yeah, there's plenty of in-play defenders here. Goalkeeper, perhaps shoot as usual, play you can afford. And then finally, our core. It's a tough one. I think you go Salah, and then I'm really tempted to put Jordan Ayew. I'm putting him here for now. That's not a guarantee that I play him. There's a couple of factors that affect whether he's that good of a player or not, such as whether El Canu starts. Like if he doesn't, he'd be no brainer. If he does, I'd still be super tempted by him. And whether Nunez starts. Since I'd probably go Nunez over Ayew at just because of the same price and Liverpool have the best matchup. And then it's tough. I think you go defender. I think you probably just go Alexander Arnold. He's got the upside that just makes him so good. Even if he's not guaranteed set pieces, he only took like what one corner against Forest, had 9 crosses. Like and Forest is a tough matchup. I don't think Brentford will be that resilient. Like I think that's a lot more ability for him to get upside there. Another route I could end up going is Salah, Alexander Arnold, and then Simicas leaves a little bit less room for Robinson, but it's still doable if you have 3D. But yeah, guys, those are guys I'm thinking about as usual. Check out the FSI Discord and website linked below, and I'll see you for the next one.